Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again in this YouTube astrological segment. I'm going to be talking about transit Chiron conjunct natal Neptune. Now, when you have transits that involve Chiron, it can be about physical and emotional wounds, helping, healing, suffering. There could be some turmoil we're going through. Can be where we feel inept. And when you have transit Chiron conjunct natal Neptune, well, it may manifest in physical and emotional wounds, helping, healing, could be going through some kind of suffering or anguish, and it may be connected with one's dreams or fantasies. It might be where there's that figurative wound in one's dreams or fantasies. It could have something to do with maybe one set their ideals, their fantasies, their dreams at too high of a pedestal or bar, and it was something that was unattainable, and there might be emotional suffering in connection with it. It could simply be a life diversion that might have stopped you from maybe attaining or that goal or that dream or whatever you had your sights set on. But remember that when you're talking about conjunctions in astrology, they are neutral. They can go either way. They can be beneficial and auspicious, but they could also be adverse as well. And it's a lot of times it could be a combination of both. A lot of this is predicated and dependent on aspects that this transit makes to other points in your natal chart. Now, it could also be about the dissolving and dissipation. It could be something, or it could be suffering can be connected with something that was dissolved or is dissipated. And say if it's in the second house or Taurus, it might be something on a monetary level or some possessions or resources. The fourth house or the zodiac sign Cancer, it could be something that could be home or family related. And the thing about this too, there might be private suffering at this time because remember, Neptune is connected with isolation, seclusion, and solitude. So you might be going through. This is a time where, on a positive end, I mean, this could be a time where you can kind of figuratively lick those wounds in private. If you have any suffering, it could be a good opportunity to go. It could be doing soul searching and trying to get an understanding maybe of what certain things that have happened that that's causing some turmoil or anguish or suffering or what have you. Because isolation can often mean you're going to be isolation is about being by yourself, and you might find that spot where where basically you could be meditating and not really have any distractions from others in doing so. And the thing about this too is Neptune is also associated with imprisonment. So it's time to be very careful with this because this could also manifest in suffering connected with some kind of incarceration or imprisonment. If anybody sees this out here, and if you happen to be a habitual offender, this is that time where might be apprehended, and crime obviously doesn't pay, and it's not something you know um, that anyone really should condone. And I'm just talking about an isolated cases that it could manifest in some kind of imprisonment, or it could be the result. Imprisonment could happen as a result of something spontaneous, even if one is not a habitual offender. If it's an Aries, it could be some kind of volatile situation or crime. Could be somebody losing one's temper. But remember that when Chiron, as I talked about before, is that conjunctions can be neutral. On a positive side, this could be about self-healing in what things that I have talked about, and especially if transit Chiron is retrograde, as that can reflect self-healing. So this is also a time too where it could be about self-healing by means of surrendering or forgiveness. When I say surrender, I don't mean it's not necessarily the literal sense when you go to the police and turn yourself in. I'm not saying that it couldn't manifest that way. That would be very isolated and remote though. But surrendering is somehow, it could be acknowledging simply that you were wrong and admitting some kind of transgression or default or something you did that may have hurt somebody, and looking and asking for forgiveness in that as well. Neptune can also be about inspiration. So it can be a time where you might be able to heal others by inspiring them, encouraging them to meet their ideals. The things that might have seemed unattainable might be a little bit more realistic than what was originally thought. I mean, things of that nature could also be that you might feel uninspired at this time because Chiron again is connected, with our, could be suffering, our, wounds, whether they're emotional or physical. Um, and the thing too is, as far as anatomically, Neptune is connected with the feet, the toes, the lymphatic and immune system. And this could be a time where you might have greater propensity for some kind of injury or illness in connection with this. It's really important at this time, more so than most other transits, to take your precautions as far as that immune system goes, and try to avoid things that might lower it. I'm not sure if this is true or not. Like, as an example, though, if this is true, that like going out, in the cold and not being protected and not wearing enough of your, enough clothing to combat cold weather, I think that may have something to do with the lower immune system, but you may want to confirm that on the internet. But I think that could be an example. But also to remember, Neptune is connected with delusion as well. So there could be suffering where you might have deluded yourself in a situation. It could be with a person, say if it was in the fifth house, it could be a romantic partner, or seventh house, it might be somebody that you thought was a prospective significant other, or may have been a significant other, and they didn't quite live up to your ideals, and you set you up for basically a big letdown. Neptune is also associated with deception and duplicity. So it might be a time too where you might be trying to heal yourself in those matters, but you may be going through some suffering in connection with that. If it's in, say, the second house, or Taurus, it might be through some kind of financial fraud that you might have had to contend with. Now, Neptune is connected with idealism as well, so it might be a time, if you're doing any self-healing, it might be done with a lot of idealism and thinking that, nothing's really going to stop you from being able to help yourself at this point in time, whether it might be through some counseling or, meditation or prayer, whatever, avenue is chosen depending on the situation. Um, it's also a period as well where we're looking at this. This could be, Neptune is connected with confusion as well. So it might be a time where it might be going through some suffering connected with a confusing situation. Um, it might be something, trying to understand, a person, or maybe there was a, crime that was committed somewhere. Say if this is in the third house, and if there was a crime committed, and, trying to, figure out who may have committed it. It might be something where you're very ambivalent and torn at this time, and it might be causing a lot of exasperation. Neptune is also very nebulous and unclear, so it might be a time where you're trying to, where you could be going through something, very negative in terms of a person or something that's very unclear and nebulous. Seventh house, it could be a prospective significant other or significant other. The third house, it might be somebody, might be a sibling, a cousin, or maybe a neighbor. In some cases, and you're just trying to figure things out. And Neptune in the seventh house natally, I have that, and that could indicate having difficulty deciphering, you know, um, intentions of others, and ascertaining as far as their character. So if you have this in the seventh house, it might be going through more difficulty in doing that. Now, also too, another way this could manifest, this could be about your deepest wound that you may be experiencing, may be connected with betrayal, deception, duplicity. Say if this falls in Gemini, as an example, it could be through gossiping, plagiarism, prevarication. As some examples, it could say if it's in the 11th house, it might be somebody that you thought was a friend, or it might have been an acquaintance you knew, or somebody at some group, club, or organization that you were involved with. Now, Neptune is also, again, it's connected with helping and healing. It's the wounded healer. It might be healing others through using self-sacrifice or something with spirituality, the metaphysical, which includes astrology, even photography, perhaps in some cases, if it's say if you found some old photos of you and a person, you and that person you might be helping. Maybe bring some positive memories to them, and it might create a little more happiness. As some example, as an example. Hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that. I'm back. But anyway, this could also, in some cases, remember Chiron is connected with physical wounds as well. It may be connected something Neptune related, such as lethargy or body fat, or even drugs or alcohol. It could be chemical assimilation. It may even be an inadvertent chemical assimilation. Say if this is in the fourth house, maybe it's something like through radon that was in your home. Also, too, this transit may be expressed in depleted or diminished self-esteem or self-worth. It could be due to being bamboozled, deceived, being overly gullible. Maybe it has to do with some weakness that you feel you have in your character in some cases. Now, let's say if this is in the 8th house and or Scorpio, it might be through some credit card or insurance fraud. Credit cards, insurance can be connected with Scorpio. Neptune, of course, are things that are deceptive and fraudulent. You may also be experiencing some ineptitude. It could be due to escapist tactics. It could be too much isolation. Maybe there's could be an addiction in some cases. It may be something that's associated with dissipation or dissolving of a certain situation in your life. It might be some inability you might be dealing with. Say if this is in Scorpio in the 11th house as an example, it could be it might be connected with a manipulative, just Scorpio, or friend, of course, which is the 11th house. Um, Also, too, you might be dealing with some very nebulous or unclear suffering or pain. It might be something that you may be having, but you're not able to, maybe it's tough finding the root of it. Um, it might be something too where you're trying to, it could also be in some cases in a positive manifestation. This may also be expressed in dissolving or dissipation, which is Neptune, of a physical related matter, because remember that conjunctions can be neutral, they can be positive or negative. Neptune, is about dissolving dissipation, and Chiron is connected with wounds, emotional or physical. It can even be a psychological issue that may be starting, may be dissolving at this time as well, if that is something that a person has. So anyway, people, that will conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.